Everybody assumes Gennadiy Golovkin is the first ballot Hall of Famer. When you really break down the resume, is it as legendary as people make it out to be? So let's talk about it. What's up, this Mosquito Spray? You're tuned into Mosquito Spray's Boxing Breakdown. So I've been hearing, a little chit-chatter about, with the Hall of Fame voting coming up and all that, whether or not Gennadiy Golovkin is the first ballot Hall of Famer. So there's a lot of fans out there that believe that if you don't say Triple G is the first ballot Hall of Famer, you're either an idiot or you're a hater. So we're going to do it today, man. We're going to break down Triple G's resume, look at the ins and outs of it, and bump it against other legendary middleweights, since he was a career middleweight. And we're going to see where he fits as far as the pecking order when it comes to being a Hall of Famer, and whether or not he should be first ballot or not. So let's check it out and let's get into it. All right, so as you can see on the graph, we have Gennadiy Golovkin pictured here with three guys who have been in the discussion as the all-time great middleweights. You got the great Carlos Monzon, the late great marvelous Marvin Hagler, and the great Bernard the Executioner Hopkins. All three of these guys were at one time or another discussed as possibly the greatest middleweight in the history of boxing. And of course, like I said, more modern day fans are going to recognize these guys and their accomplishments. And being the fact that Gennadiy Golovkin is, more recent, we're going to see how he stacks up against these guys. As usual, we're going to go through a few categories and we're going to rack and stack, see how everyone measures up, what they did, who they did it against. And we're going to see how Triple G messes up to these three guys and to see whether or not, with respect to these guys, if he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And also in respect of that, since all but one of these guys were career middleweights, we're going to keep this discussion strictly middleweight. I know Hopkins accomplished a lot at light heavyweight as well, so for the sake of this argument, this is only going to be based on what all four of these gentlemen accomplished in the 160-pound division. So let's go on and see how this thing looks. All right, so the first category is each man's title fight record. So we'll go around the loop. First, we got Monzon, 15 wins, no losses, no draws, with 10 knockouts. Bernard Hopkins, 20 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, 13 knockouts. Marvin Hagler was 13 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, with 12 knockouts. And Gennadiy Golovkin, you notice there's an asterisk next to the first one. It's 22 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, with 20 knockouts. And up underneath that, 17 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, with 15 knockouts. You ask yourself, oh, Mosquito Spray, why is there an asterisk next to that 22? Well, one thing I've explained over and over about this channel is when we recognize champions, when we recognize championship belts, we recognize full titles. You are the full champion of that sanctioning body if you are that sanctioning body's champion. Well, the first 5 defenses of Gennadiy Golovkin's title reign were the WBA regular championship. And you can look it up, this is public knowledge. The super champion was Daniel "The Real Deal" Gill. And Daniel Gill was stripped of the WBA title in October 2012, and Gennadiy Golovkin was elevated to super champion at that time. So after those first 5 defenses, Gennadiy Golovkin became the full super champion of the WBA. So in reality, Golovkin had 17 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, with 15 knockouts in true title fights. If we're going to keep it all the way funky across the board, we got to keep it all the way funky across the board. Because I say the same thing about Tank Davis. Go back and look at my video about Tank Davis, about the waste of talent. People call him a 3-division, 5-time champion. I call it BS. Mario Barrios was a WBA regular champion. How is Mario Barrios going to be a world champion when Josh Taylor was undisputed? It don't work like that. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to respect what we respect on this channel. We ain't into all the politics and the fanboying and none of that. As far as Gennadiy Golovkin being a true champion, he had 19 title fights. You know what I'm saying? Now, according to, what the boxing world has told us and fed us, he's had 24 of them and he won 22 fights. But regardless of that, you can believe whichever one of these records you want to believe is true, but this is how he stacks up against these all-time greats who made all true defenses of real titles, all these other 3 men. So that's this category. Let's get into the next one. All right, so the next category on deck is title defenses. Now you'll see two numbers. The first number at the top is the overall title defenses, and the one underneath is lineal title defenses. So let's go around the table again. First up, we got the great Carlos Monzon. He had 14 overall title defenses, and as you can see, they were all of the lineal titles. So he had 14 lineal defenses as well. Bernard Hopkins had 20 overall title defenses and 6 lineal defenses. Marvelous Marvin Hagler had 12 overall title defenses. They were all of the lineal title as well, so he had 12 lineal defenses. Gennadiy Golovkin, again, we got that asterisk next to that 20. I explained that earlier. You know, those first 5 were the WBA regular title. So he had, in reality, he had 15 overall title defenses. Gennadiy Golovkin was never the lineal champion. When he faced the lineal champion in Saul Canelo Alvarez, we know how that worked out. You know, they had a draw, then he lost. So that's what it is, you know what I'm saying? In this category as well, you know, on paper, things look a certain way. You see the number 20. Oh, he tied Bernard Hopkins for the all-time title defenses. Well, I mean, if you want to believe that the regular champion is a real championship, then go right ahead, man. But by this channel standards, he had 15 overall title defenses of true belts. So that's where he stacks up with these guys, man. Let's get into this next category. All right, so next up, we got each guy's record versus Hall of Famers. And let's go around this table again. First up, we got Carlos Monzon versus Hall of Famers. 5 wins, no losses, no draws, 4 knockouts. Bernard Hopkins, 2 wins, 1 loss, no draws, 2 knockouts. Marvin Hagler, 2 wins, 1 loss, no draw, 1 knockouts. Gennadiy Golovkin. Well, again, another thing on this channel is when we look at Hall of Famers, we don't really talk about guys that we think should or would or could and all that kind of stuff. We talk about guys that are currently in the Hall of Fame. So you'll see the NA for not applicable because Gennadiy Golovkin has not faced anyone during his career that is currently in the Hall of Fame. But just for, you know, this discussion, we do know he faced one guy that is Hall of Fame bound, Canelo Alvarez. And as you can see on the graphic, his record versus Canelo Alvarez was 0 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, 0 knockouts. So other than that, you know, he faced no guys that's in the Hall of Fame. So that's how he stacks up against these all-time greats, man. You know, they all face Hall of Famers. They came up victorious more than they lost. So that's what it is. Let's get to this next category. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the top 3 opponents these man faced in the division during their run. So first up, we got Carlos Monzon. He faced Nito Benvenuto twice, which is who he took the title from, stopping them both times via TKO. He also faced Emil Griffith twice, stopping him the first time and winning the next one via unanimous decision. And he also stopped Jose Napoles. All these men were Hall of Famers. Got Bernard Hopkins. He faced Roy Jones. He lost via unanimous decision. He stopped Tito Trinidad and stopped Oscar De La Hoya. And of course, all these men were Hall of Famers as well. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. He beat Roberto Duran via unanimous decision. He stopped Tommy Hearns in the 3rd round. And he lost a split decision, a highly debated, still to this day, split decision to Sugar Ray Leonard. And of course, we all know all of these men were Hall of Famers as well. Now we get to Gennadiy Golovkin. He beat David Lemieux via TKO. He won a unanimous decision versus Danny Jacobs. And then as far as at middleweight, because there was a 3rd fight, so we're going to just consider middleweight here. He faced Canelo Alvarez twice. First time earning a split draw, and this next time losing via majority decision. So, like I said, all the other 3 men, everyone on this list is a Hall of Famer that they faced. Like I said, currently, no Hall of Famers on Triple G's resume, but of course, Canelo will go in, 3 years after he's retired. So, when you look at these levels of competition, how do y'all think Triple G stacks up compared to these other 3 men? So, that, I can only put here what's real, you know what I'm saying? Not fantasy, none of that. Reality, we see what it is, man. So let's talk about this a little more in depth. All right, so I just had the graphic of, the competition that these guys ran through as champions, the best opponents and whatnot. So the argument you're going to get from the fanboys is, as you see on the screen, who could Triple G have fought when he was clearly ducked by everyone? He was the boogeyman of the division, and he had to fight the 40-year-old Kasim Umas, the Marco Antonio Rubios, or even having Kell Brook move up 2 weight classes from welterweight to come challenge for his title. Because all the other men in the division, all the other champions were scared to death of the great beast from the east, Gennadiy Golovkin, him and his bone-crushing power. And they wanted no parts of him. He was ducked constantly. Nobody wanted parts of him. So who could he have fought, man? Everybody was ducking him. So what you talking about, Mosquito? Why you ain't giving this man a pass? He was ducked by everybody, man. Prove me wrong, because I believe he was ducked by everyone, Mosquito. You full of crap. Gennadiy Golovkin was the boogeyman. He's the best middleweight we've ever seen. Nobody could stand up under this man's power. Please tell me who wanted to fight this man when he was clearly ducked by everyone. All right, so as you can see on the graph, we got 4 men on here. From top to bottom, we got Andre Ward, Landy Lara, Demetrius Andrade, and Jamal Charlo. And you can see the dates up under their names or up under their pictures. And what that represents is, now all 4 of these men call Triple G's name, whether it be before, after fights, post-fight interviews, whatever the case may be. All 4 of these men called his name several times, but the dates, listed here are the notable times. And it's, like I say, you can look this stuff up. It's public knowledge that they actually called Triple G out. So it's in chronological order. In September of 2015, you had Andre Ward calling Triple G out. We're going to get back to that one a little later. January 2016, you had Landy Lara calling Triple G out. In January and June of 2019, you had Demetrius Andrade calling Triple G out. And in April of 2018, you had Jamal Charlo calling Triple G out. Now let's touch a little more on the guy in the top left corner, Mr. Andre Ward. The reason I want to say that for last, because if some of y'all may remember, there was a time, I believe in 2015, when Triple G and Abel Sanchez, I believe, came out and made a statement. They said, we will face anyone from 154 to 168, because of course they were at 160. He was reigning middleweight champion. And what some people believed was he was trying to coax Mayweather or Pacquiao to come up to come up in weight to fight him, which I thought would have been a bad decision on either of their parts because of the size and power differential, whatever the case may be. And he said he would challenge anybody between those 3 weight classes. Well, unfortunately for them, there was a gentleman from Oakland, California, who had a belt at 168 who raised his hand, and that was Andre Ward. Now, allegedly, this was how this went down. They once the Andre Ward raised his hand, Triple G them said, because there were 2 other names at 68 at the time. I believe it was Carl Froch and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. They said, Carl Froch and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. will go all the way up to 68 and fight either one of y'all. But you, Andre Ward, you got to come down to a catch weight of 164 in order for us to fight you. Now, of course, Andre Ward put that out. He said he has emails, to back this up, which he's never made public. And of course, the Golovkin camp came out and denied and said, oh, we didn't ask for a catch weight or whatever. Whatever the case may be, the fight did not get made. But my point in showing these 4 men is, before, when I showed the graphic of the top guys that each of these guys had faced, you had 2 of these men on this photograph who at the time were at one time or another were reigning champions in this man's division, who called his name, especially Andrade. You know what I'm saying? And Golovkin did not face him. Charlo, he did not face him. Lara, because Lara was calling out Canelo and Triple G. Canelo faced him, Triple G did not. Andre Ward, at the time, future Hall of Famer. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, if you go around this thing, there are arguably, I mean, do you think Lara could have stood up under Triple G's power? Do you think Charlo, being, I consider a limited 1-2 fighter, do you think he could have beat Triple G? Now Andre, that's at that time, in his prime, that's a big long southpaw that can box. That's hard. And Andre Ward, so those would have been tougher fights. But I mean, just think about it: win, lose, or draw. What these fights could have done for this man's resume and his place in the history of boxing. Just think about it. I mean, we've seen Andre Ward, hurt before. We've seen him drop by Kovalov, Darnell Boone. So we've seen this. We've seen that Ward can be hit and hurt. You know what I'm saying? But Triple G never stepped to the plate and challenged himself with these guys that, I guess were a threat, a real threat. And his resume suffered because of it. Because of that, he only fought one guy that's going into the Hall of Fame, man. And let's get into that. All right, so you see here, the one guy he did face that, will be in the Hall of Fame later on is Saul Canelo Alvarez, who at the time was the lineal middleweight champion of the world. They squared out the first time in what ended up being, as I mentioned earlier, a split draw. There were some that believed Golovkin got robbed. There were some believe, Canelo won, whatever the case may be. Me, myself, I felt the fight could have gone either way, and I thought a draw was fair. I think what really put a black eye on the night was, because if you remember the scorecards, one judge had it, a draw. One judge had it 7-5 Golovkin. But then the third judge, and I remember this name, it was Adelaide Bird. She had it 10-2 for Canelo. And we all know we did not watch a 10-2 fight. So, of course, that scorecard was what put a black eye on the night. But I thought it was a close fight. Canelo did some great things in that ring that night defensively. He made Golovkin miss and made him pay a lot. Was elusive on the ropes, and it was a great fight. I actually, there was a guy I used to be cool with. He was a Golovkin fan, so we watched the fight on his phone. We were outside watching on his phone, and after every round, I looked at him like, hey, who you think got that round, and so we went all the way through the fight, man, and after the 12th round, I looked at him, at that time, it was pretty close or whatever, and I asked him after the 12th round, like, who you think got it? He looked at me and said, if I give that round to Canelo, that means it's a draw. So even, the fanboyest of Golovkin fans saw what happened that night. So the first fight was a draw. The second fight, there were some people that, they think that Golovkin won the second fight. He landed some jabs here and there, but what I saw that night, of course, the first 4 rounds or so, Canelo was, because Golovkin, they complained about Canelo, oh, he was running, he was moving. We want him to fight with Golovkin, them turned Mexican style. So Canelo gave him what he wanted, started walking him down from the opening bell, and was getting the better of the work. And, things leveled out. And what I had, after 10 rounds, I had it 5 tight. And another fight that it was similar to me was the Earl Spencer-Sean Porter fight, which I also had scored the same way, 5 apiece after 10 rounds. There was a close fight, but there was a clear winner, just like Earl Spence did in the fight with Porter. That night, Canelo bit down on his mouthpiece, and he clearly won rounds 11 and 12 to win that fight 7-5 on my card, just like Spence did 7-5 against Porter. So I thought Canelo won the second fight, and we ain't got to talk about the third fight, and it wasn't at middleweight, so we ain't gonna worry about that. So, like I said, because he had chose not to fight the other guys I had pictured, Charlo, Andre, Ward, or Lara, the one guy he did fight. Regardless of what any of us think, because again, we go by what happened, not what our heart is telling us or what we think. Against the one guy that is going to the Hall of Fame, Golovkin's record against him is 0 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. So he sold himself short, man, in my opinion, and robbed himself of what could have been a greater legacy. Like I said, it ain't all about just winning all the time. When you fight these guys, fans remember that. The sport remembers that. The history of boxing remembers that. And Gennadiy Golovkin, it can be argued. I mean, it can arguably be said that his greatest clear victory over somebody is Kell Brook, coming up 2 weight classes. Because, the Danny Jacobs fight was a close fight. Golovkin scored a knockdown to take that, but it was a close fight. So when you got to mention the guy that came up 2 weight classes as possibly one of your best victories, that's a problem. That's a problem. So this is Gennadiy Golovkin's legacy, man, and it's nobody's fault but his own, man. And this is where he stacks up against these guys, because he chose not to fight the fights, man. He wanted to be on easy street and sell this illusion that he this big knockout artist against guys that were overmatched. And when it came time to get in with the big dogs, he said nay most of the time, but when he said yay, he came up short. So that's what that is, man. So now that we done been all through the categories and everything, let's talk about the main subject, man. Is Triple G a first ballot Hall of Famer when you compare him to the likes of Bernard Hopkins, Carlos Monzon, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler? Now, of those three men, there are some things I need to mention. Now, Monzon retired in '77, so the Hall of Fame was not open until 1989, and the inaugural class went in 1990, which Monzon was a part of. So I guess technically you could say he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. You know, of course he had to wait till it was open, whatever. So he got in with the inaugural class. So you can call him a first ballot Hall of Famer. Bernard Hopkins was also a first ballot Hall of Famer. He was a true first ballot Hall of Famer. He had to wait 3 years and he went in. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, who some call the greatest middleweight that ever lived. You know what I'm saying? Marvin Hagler retired in '87. He did not get in until 1993, which means Marvin Hagler had to wait until his 4th year of eligibility to get in. Now, if you're going to tell me Marvelous Marvin Hagler, who had a record of 62 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, 52 knockouts, a title fight record of 13 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, which the loss was highly debated with 12 knockouts, 12 overall defenses, and 12 defenses of the lineal title, versus Hall of Famers, 2 wins, 1 loss, no draw, 1 knockout. You know what I'm saying? Took on all the other of the 4 kings of his era, you know, Duran, Hearns, and Leonard, took them all on. You know, and others, you know what I'm saying? John the Beast Mugabe, Vito Antuofermo, he fought all these guys, you know what I'm saying? Benny Briscoe, a lot of these guys, you know, coming up the hard way. He had to wait 4 years. And you got Gennadiy Golovkin. Yeah, now he has either way you look at it, his title fight record is impressive. Whether you want to say he fought all 24 of these real title fights or whatever, he's 22, 1-1 with 20 knockouts, or if you want to go on this true title fight record, which should be, in my opinion, depending of this channel, based on our criteria, 17 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw with 15 knockouts. Either way, that's an impressive knockout, you know, and title run or whatever. But how does he stack up against these other guys? And who did he do it against? The other thing is, you know, the title we put the most respect on over here is the lineal title. Monzon, 14 defenses of the lineal title. Hagler, 12 defenses of the lineal title. Hopkins, 6 defenses of the lineal title. Golovkin was never lineal champion. He took on the lineal champion and lost. You know, drew once and lost the other time against Canelo. The other great middleweights of his era, you know, Monzon, he took on Benvenuti twice, Griffith twice. Now Napolis came up and got stopped. Hagler took on Hearns, took on Leonard, took on Duran. Hopkins took on Roy Jones, Tito Trinidad, De La Hoya. And then you got Golovkin. As far as the best middleweights that he could have took on in his era, you know, he didn't fight Jamal Charlo, he didn't fight Demetrius Andrade, he did fight David Lemieux, he did fight Daniel Jacobs, but he left a lot to be desired. Aris Landilera wanted a piece of him. He didn't fight him. Andre Ward, that was an excellent legacy fight. You know what I'm saying? That, you know, maybe he could have landed a big punch and made something happen. We'll never know. He just did not take these chances. He took the safe route. And his legacy has suffered because of that, man, amongst real boxing purists and real fans and historians of the sport. Triple G, you know, he was beloved by the fans because, you know, just like baseball, how they dig, you know, chicks dig the long ball, you know, that phrase. Everybody digs knockouts, and Triple G gave us that. But who was he knocking out? What top-notch middleweights or anybody around those weights was he knocking out? You know what I'm saying? You can't get credit from me for knocking out Marco Antonio Rubio, a 40-year-old Kasim Uma, Dominique Wade, William Monroe. These guys are not were not top middleweights around that time, man. They just were not. They were opponents, simply opponents. And Triple G built his whole legacy on doing that. You know what I'm saying? And so as far as him being a first ballot Hall of Famer, if Hagler had to wait 4 years, no sir. In my eyes, no, he's not. And you can call me a hater, tell me I don't know nothing about boxing. Hey, test me. We'll see. You know what I'm saying? But Triple G, no, man. If he does get in, it'll be because of this quote unquote 20 title defenses, which is tied with Bernard Hopkins. But Bernard Hopkins was a true champion. He won the full IBF title when he had his second fight with Segundo Mosquito, and he became full IBF champion. So everything from that point on was a true title defense. You know, he collected other belts along the way. He beat Keith Holmes and beat Trinidad in that middleweight tournament to collect WBC and WBA title respectively. And then, you know, he just took on all comers, man. I mean, he fought everybody that was in his division at the time. He tell me to smoke Hopkins ducked. Tell me to smoke Monzon ducked. Tell me to smoke Hagler ducked. I mean, I'm waiting, you know what I'm saying? Tell me who these guys were ducking around that time that they could have fought, that they ran from, that they ducked. But I easily put 4 guys on the screen that Triple G clearly could have fought. And his legacy is gonna suffer because of that, man. I mean, I think he'll probably get in or whatever, but should he be a first ballot Hall of Famer? I don't think so, man. But that's my opinion. Feel free to share your down in the comment. Appreciate y'all's time, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Y'all take it light.